Well, hello. This is B. Wendy Jackson, your lovely host of the Empower to Empower You podcast. I am so excited to be here today. Just for those who are tuning in for the first time, Empower to Empower You podcast is about all things Jesus Christ, mental health, anything to help you improve your overall well-being, change your thoughts, so to change your heart posture, your behavior, so that you can change your life. Each podcast episode is filled with insight, information, and inspiration. And it's amazing. It's interesting how May is recognized as Mental Health Month. So today we have a treat for you. I get to interview and have a conversation with my metabolic health coach, DeNitra Davis. Let me tell you a little bit about DeNitra. And for those of you who are listening, you are in for a treat. For those of you who are watching, listen, when I'm done, you're going to want to flood her inbox. DeNitra Davis is the advocate, coach, and educator of nutritional knowledge, which provides educational service to help prevent, reverse, and decrease the instances of chronic illnesses by focusing on optimizing lifestyle changes. Simply put, she says, if you knew better, would you, could you, should you do better? Thus, nutritional knowledge, that is nutritional knowledge, right? And so DeNitra has successfully improved her lifestyle. She's been able to reverse chronic illness and health issues in her own life, and she endeavors to join others on their journey to optimal health. She is a certified, bona fide coach practitioner with the Nutrition Network, a metabolic health practitioner with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, and a keto carnivore health coach with Keto Adapted. Listen, I'm so honored to have DeNitra Davis, advocator, coach, educator here on the Empower to Empower You podcast as we talk about the truth about insulin resistance. Ooh, welcome, DeNitra.
Thank you, B. Wendy. So grateful to be here. I appreciate it, the opportunity to share.
Yes, ma'am. And I will publicly tell the world that how much I appreciate you. The Lord led me to you at an event hosted and facilitated by our mutual sister, Clarissa Joy. We were at a VIP empowerment event this January 2025. And this is where you had about 15 minutes to just talk a little bit about your heart for people and as it relates to health. And let me tell you, boy, did you just kind of flip the lid off of people's heads and minds. You had people mouth open. For me, it was an immediate, I've got to book a consultation with this woman. I've never seen her in my life, but she was talking about insulin resistance, and she was talking about a little bit about carnivore. And I know that you don't promote carnivore, but I know you're going to talk a little bit about that. And so I booked a consultation, and it has been life-changing for me since working with you February 8th, 2025. So let's get into it. Why is this your personal mission?
Yes, absolutely. And it has been a pleasure to meet you. But for me, my own personal journey, I was filled with, health issues that I thought would be, lifelong for me. Things that I did not understand that were happening to me. I was blaming them on aging, blaming them on, the environment, and overall thinking genetics. These things have been prevalent in my family history. And so this is why they are happening to me. What I ultimately discovered is that through a diagnosis of autoimmune, which was lupus, prediabetes, gout, all of these things were plaguing me essentially. And I just wasn't willing to take the doctor's report, if you will. I needed to learn more. And so what happened is I had a significant family member who passed away that had some of those same diagnoses. And so because of that, I wanted to go deeper. And I'm not perfect on my journey. I definitely have reversed some things. I've learned some things. And so ultimately what I discovered is that, I was being poisoned basically by the foods that I was eating. And in many ways thinking that those foods were healthy for me. I mean, I've tried vegan, I've tried vegetarian, And during that season, I was my sickest. Although I had lost weight, I was still not well.
Yeah. Wow. So from your own experiences, how did you land into metabolic health? Like, what was it that made you say, I'm going to, I mean, obviously, for just because I've worked with you for a couple months now, I know this is a calling from you. Like, you have a mandate, a mantle, you carry it well and you carry it heavily to be able to, like, God gave you this anointing, this calling to say something, to see something and say something, and to really help people heal, to help people prioritize their wellness. But what was it for you to say, I've got to get into understanding metabolic health and wellness?
Absolutely. So for me, I started learning about what really fuels the body, like what's happening in the body. What they were telling me in the autoimmune space is that this is your body fighting against itself. That's what I kept hearing. Your body is fighting against itself. What I ultimately figured out is that my body was fighting against foreign substances that I was putting in my body. And so initially, it started for me with learning about nightshade, what we call vegetables, right? You're talking your starchy potatoes, eggplants, tomatoes. All of those things were causing me to be highly inflamed. So I started removing those things. And then I was told, to eat more nuts, eat more grains, eat wheat bread versus white bread, eat brown rice versus white rice. And so I was doing those things, but I wasn't getting well. And so the deeper I've gone into this, what I've ultimately figured out is that sugar is the problem. Carbohydrates is a nice name for sugar, and sugar is a toxic poison that was making me sick. And so the more I removed carbohydrates from my diet, the better I got. And so for me, that transitioned into, I was seeing it for me as an experiment for my own self, but that wasn't enough. Like, I was seeing the changes. My labs were changing. My body was changing. I was feeling better. I needed to understand the science. So thus the metabolic health practitioner, the keto carnivore coach, the nutrition network, because I wanted to understand, what is the science of this? I mean, because I have been a dieter, if you will, my whole life, right? One diet to the next diet, vegan, vegetarian, the Daniel fast. I was trying all these things, and all of them had certain benefits. But this way that I am now related to decreasing my sugar intake has been sustainable, life changing. The cravings are going away. And so for me, that's metabolic, that's metabolism, that's how food or food products are working in my body. And so ultimately, what I figured out is my body only needs and thrives on protein and fat. I could live longer and better without carbohydrates, which they are all sugar, right? The simple carbs, the complex carbs are all sugar. And so for
Absolutely.
me, that was a eye-opening.
Yes. And it has been eye opening for me. In my work with you, earlier in February 8th, you discovered in our consultation that based on my A1C, that I was dealing with symptoms of insulin resistance, and you started to educate me on insulin resistance. And let me say it on record: you were the only person and the first practitioner to highlight, and no shame or against any medical provider, but to highlight that I was walking around with symptoms or with a with prediabetes. And so let's talk a little bit about what is insulin resistance.
Absolutely. And so I appreciate your transparency with me and your audience, because we go to the doctor often to get our lab work done. And many times we leave the doctor's office and the things are in the green. And we say, the doctor or the nurse that calls you says everything is normal. All your labs look good. And so this is what your experience was, only to have a non-medical person look at your labs and just simply take your A1C number and put it against the traditional statistic of what is prediabetes, to discover that you in fact had an A1C of a 5.9, which is in the pre-diabetic range. I like that you are highlighting insulin resistance because most doctors in the medical field, it's not commonly spoken about. We only speak about insulin related to a diabetic. But there is emerging science that says insulin resistance is the precursor. If we, and in your case at that time, on your lab work that we were reviewing, you had the A1C that said prediabetes, but that also is an indicator. Anyone who is prediabetic is also insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance means that the hormone insulin in your body is working overtime to manage the sugar that you're feeding it. I just want to say that again. Insulin resistance, your body is essentially resisting, insulin is resisting the sugar that you are feeding your body. And so when you're on an overdose, if you will, of sugar, of glucose, then insulin is working overtime. It's almost, I use the example of a car in pumping gas. If you over pump the gas tank and that gas is everywhere in the body, then it's going to cause an issue. And that's essentially what's happening in our bodies, is that when insulin is on overload, then it's causing problems. What is the problem? It is storing, because it cannot break down the effective way. So those things become stored on the body. So when you're over consuming carbohydrates, again, which is sugar, then this is what's causing joint pain. This is what's causing us to be overweight, be inflamed. So inflammation is like punching someone in the eye, and now there's this swelling. So essentially what we are doing with carbohydrates is swelling up. Our bodies cannot metabolize it, so it becomes storage for us. So that's insulin resistance in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's so good. And you did so well with trying, because it's hard to not go on about it, right? But I do want to, I know that the audience who are going to be listening cannot see this. DeNitra, if you, I have it on my phone because you shared it with me, but if you want to talk through the circle of hearts, for people that may be listening, I know you can't show it because I want to honor the people who are listening, but talk a little bit about how insulin resistance, you explained to me that insulin resistance is the umbrella. And a lot of times traditional medicine focus on, if you're not having symptoms of diabetes, then they're not looking for insulin resistance. Whereas you, as a metabolic health practitioner, you're specifically looking for those markers of anything. And I think you told me, according to the National Society of Metabolic Health, anything above a 5.6, I believe, you may, or maybe above a 5, is insulin resistance. So talk about some of those diseases and problems associated in your circle of hearts diagram.
Right. So in the circle of hearts, what you're going to find is, again, insulin resistance is the precursor. Most doctors only deal with it related to diabetes, but almost any chronic illness that you face that is not some type of airborne disease, some type of tragic accident, those things are in a specialty category. All other things, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 3, which now we call that Alzheimer's and dementia, is now referred to as a type 3. That is sugar of the brain. You have fatty liver, you have GERD, you have, for women who are struggling with fertility issues, PCOS, hormonal imbalance, even women who are premenopausal, PMS, all of these things are tied back to high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. I often say we blame salt for what sugar is doing with cardiovascular. So we're treating people with all of these things separately. There's a med for high blood pressure. There's a med for PCOS. There's a med for a thyroid issue. But no one is checking insulin to figure out that all of these are different manifestations. You may never become diabetic, but you may still be insulin resistant. So I recommend, in the Society of Metabolic Health, which I am accredited under, we recommend that along with your A1C, that you also get a fasting insulin. And why do we need this fasting insulin is because, remember, insulin is meant to regulate sugar. And so a lot of times when that A1C is falling in a normal range or a pre-diabetic range, that's because insulin is working overtime. And so we could almost predict much sooner and reverse some of these things if we check that fasting insulin earlier than what we're doing right now. Many times it doesn't happen at all. Most of the clients that I've worked with, people that I've had conversations with, they've never had a fasting insulin until they work with me.
Wow. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. I mean, it's mental health disorders are tied to insulin. I know that's one of our questions, but in your circle of hearts, it highlights that insulin is tied to additional things like sugar cravings. I remember being addictive to sugar. I remember being addicted to certain foods. You also identify skin disorders, eczema, acne. I remember dealing with acne even as a teenager in the Caribbean. All I ate was what they call it ground provisions, but it's starchy foods. You know, the rice, the fried fish, all those things. The visceral abdominal fat, that stubborn belly fat that people sometimes say my pregnancy weight or my baby weight when the child is 25. You know, that's still staying around. Me too. That's still staying around.
Yes, my son is 31 and I still got my baby fat.
Yes, but it is that stubborn visceral, is the abdominal visceral fat, that even retinopathy and blindness and erectile dysfunction and GERD and acid reflux. I mean, all those things are things that so many people deal with. And why is it? I mean, I know that this is probably a whole soapbox, but why is it that traditional medicine is not necessarily trained? Is it a training issue that they're not looking for these markers?
So I would say yes. Most medical doctors, the medical field, the precursor to that is medicine. So they're practicing medicine, right? And so they're not practicing healing. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but they're trained to look for symptoms and find a relief for that, which usually usually are medicines. The idea is that we're not looking at what people are eating that's causing the issue, that we're no longer feeding the body what it is meant to thrive on. We're feeding it. I call it a science project, right? All of the highly processed foods that we're eating. You know, we went through this era of telling people that fat was bad for them, right? That, you know, don't eat saturated fat, don't eat butter. It is causing your arteries to be clogged up, which is absolutely untrue. And I won't go on a soapbox on there, but there's history to show even how we got to that place. And it's going to take some time to undo that bad information, right? And so that's part of what I feel like my mission is to bring people there sooner, because if we wait, it's 30 years down the line before the way that I'm speaking and the way the community that I'm a part of are speaking, that's helping people to heal. I mean, I'm literally aging in reverse. I have pictures of me 9 years ago that I'm unrecognizable. I literally was, in my opinion, and I'm talking about me, I literally was decaying. I was walking dead based on the foods that I was feeding myself. And so removing those foods, I mean, my skin is clear. My skin was not healthy, right? And it was simply the foods. And no doctor was asking me, even with my lupus, with the diagnosis of a lupus, with the prediabetes, no one was asking me like, what are you eating that could be causing this? And as a matter of fact, I was being told to eat some things that was making the problem worse. If you are eating grains, if you're like changing from white bread to wheat bread, that is still not solving your problem, because there's still sugar. Yeah. It's still all sugar. In the body, it can only manage 1 teaspoon of sugar a day, and the body doesn't have to have any sugar at all. It is smart enough to make the glucose it needs. And we don't have to add external exogenous is what I call it, sugar, in order for us to have the glucose that's needed for the body.
Absolutely. I remember just a couple months ago working with you has also not only been a game changer for me, but it has been a reset in knowledge. It is you are anybody who works with you. I would guess that they would say that they are literally being deprogrammed. There's a deprogramming of when you open your mouth and you start teaching people what they need to know about the importance of the A1C, what they need to know. Like I had no idea that carbs were sugar. Like
Yeah.
I come from the mindset of people were saying count your calories, eat
Yeah.
your fruits and vegetables, make sure you have a balanced plate. They changed the plate, the healthy plate to a balanced plate, and in that balanced plate there's vegetables and there's a carb and then there's a piece of meat, right? Like, and so and not knocking any of those programs. I remember counting points and trying to count your macros and that is so confusing. But
Yes.
learning from you, just really helped to, wow, just you leave saying, wow, what? I've been deceived. I've been duped. What in the world? Is that the experience that you find that people walk away from being educated by your knowledge?
Absolutely. I mean, even for myself,
Yeah.
fought it for some time, like because I had all of these traditional thoughts in my head that like you must have your fruits and vegetables. I remember forcing my son, when I thought we were being healthy, I remember forcing him to eat fruits and vegetables. I remember choosing things for him that were supposed to be healthier, right? I remember, and again, I know I'm saying it a lot, but like going from white, we love rice. And so we started being told that, oh my God, white rice is terrible. You must eat brown rice, right? Now we have this whole push even around cereal, and everybody is excited that we're taking the certain dyes that are supposed to be poisonous out of cereal. We shouldn't be eating cereal, period. It's not a food.
Right.
So that improvement is not an improvement. It is still sugar. I
Yeah.
remember being told to eat honey nut Cheerios, to help with cholesterol, only to learn that I didn't need my cholesterol fixed. And honey nut Cheerios was sugar, right? It's still sugar. And so you're right. It is mind blowing. And I do get the tag of being like a food police, and I'm not. Like, I am just sharing knowledge. I'm just giving you awareness, something to consider. I often say the things that I say to you, you can do your own research, right? But I try to put it out there so that people can consider it, so that we can at least start demystifying not eating sugar, being okay with going to a restaurant and not having a side item, right? That it is okay, and really understanding how we even came up with sides. That's a whole nother story. But it is some demystifying that has to happen. And it is a struggle. It is a mind shift to think that finally a person has decided that they want to be healthy, only to choose the things that they thought were healthy that they were initially resisting, and now to say, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to eat more salads. I'm going to eat more vegetables. I'm going to eat more fruit. I'm going to go plant-based, right? To only decide that you're going to do that, to find out that that is not going to solve the issue that you have. It is only going to complicate it. I mean, I'm working with people who are eating, in your case, almost 300 carbs in a day, right? That all of that is a day worth of sugar. It's a whole day of sugar.
Shoosh. Well, thank God I don't eat like that anymore. I'm so grateful.
Amen.
My God, I've been delivered.
Hallelujah. To God be the glory.
Yes, yes. So I know that you just highlighted the importance of knowing your A1C, like your phone number. If you can talk a little bit about that, and also the link between. I know you are a sciencey person. You are filled with knowledge, and you are a self-acclaimed proclaimed nerd. So I think you will be okay if I called you that. I love nerds, and so talk a little
Absolutely.
bit. So why is it important to know our A1C and the link between what we know about insulin resistance or what we eat and mental health?
Absolutely. So the A1C is going to give you a 3-month average of how sugar is operating in your body. That's essentially what's happening with the A1C. They can measure the platelets in your body to know over this 3-month period. This is why the 90-day experience that you went through is so important, because in 90 days, that test ought to be able to show something else if we are improving it. So when you think about that in terms of mental health, essentially what we're saying is that your brain needs to have fat to thrive. And when you're eating a high sugar diet, it is impacting your brain health in a way that says, I'm foggy, I'm depressed, I am not getting the proper nutrients to the brain. And so I can remember, even as part of my symptoms in those days, like being super depressed or thinking that, PMS was just relative to my menstrual cycle, only to realize that it was the sugar that I was consuming and craving because I wasn't getting the right nutrients. So those cravings then turned me into mush, right? I'm always tired, because what sugar does is take you on a high and then drop you down low.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the only thing that your body is consuming, then of course it's going to have an impact on your mental health. Two authors that I want to highlight in this space, in this question: Chris Palmer has a book called Brain Energy. Georgia Ede, spelled EDE. Georgia Ede has a book called Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. And essentially, this research that they're coming up with is showing that mental health is directly tied to the over consumption of sugar in the brain. And then furthermore, when we look at dementia patients, those dementia patients are also having sugar of the brain. So we call sugar of the brain dementia, mental health, sugar of the blood, we call it diabetes. Sugar in your dental work is called cavities.
Wow.
All of these things are directly impacted by the consumption of sugar. And just remember this: anything that is plant-based is going to be sugar-based. It is going to metabolize in your body as sugar. And understand this: all the plants that we are working with is one big science project. It's a science experiment that we continue to manipulate plants to be something else, when ultimately it's like manipulating sugar.
Listen, you just made every vegan and vegetarian mad. Okay. You just, because it's interesting. And let me just disclaimer, there is no condemnation, there is no shame. This is education, this is inspiration, this is empowerment. But when we know, we can't unknow. There, your saying for nutritional knowledge is, if you knew better, would you, could you, should you do better, right? And so
Absolutely.
we did not know. I did not know that
Right.
plant. I tried vegetarian for a couple of years. I even tried vegan, and then I backslid because I had some jerk chicken. I didn't last very long, very long. But we don't know. We did not know that. I mean, I've learned this from you, that even when we think we're doing something good by eating the green, people say, "Oh, eat most of the green, get the green." And there are some greens that you can eat in moderation that have low carbs. I mean, it's on the Society of Metabolic Health. But there are, if that's all you're eating, normally when people are buying a salad, it's a big bowl of salad, right? And in their minds, they're eating healthy. They don't know that their bodies are processing it as sugar.
That's correct. And so
Yeah.
the thing about that, B. Wendy, is when we think about even being vegan and vegetarian, again, I've tried it for myself. I was my sickest. Most recently, I was at an event, and this is why I say that insulin resistance doesn't have a size, but it does have a look. I met a woman who probably was about 150 pounds, I would say. And I had done a talk. And of course, in the talk, I encouraged people to get back to eating beef, eating meat, eating fat. those are the things that are essential to the body. And so she and I had a sidebar conversation. And of course, I can look at her skin, look at her eyes, and tell that there is some insulin resistance there, right? There's a physical look that I've been able to identify. She did not want to share with me initially. She just kept saying, yeah, my A1C is high. Yeah, my A1C is high. I was like, but you're not saying what it is. She's like, yeah, but I'm not eating meat. I don't care. I'm never going back to meat. I'm never going back to meat. So ultimately, I challenged her a little bit more and she eventually shared that her A1C was a 10. The normal A1C to not even be, which says that she's a diabetic. We were standing there. She's a vegan. She's a vegetarian. We were standing there in her loyalty, if you will, to being vegan and vegetarian. She was standing there as a diabetic who probably in the room that we were in would never have appeared to be the person in the room as the diabetic, but there she stood. And it is because if you are only eating vegan, vegetarian, you have removed all meat, all animal based from your diet. You are a sugar eater. That means that is the only thing that you are feeding your body is sugar. And so, yes, by all means, it is going to keep your insulin spiked. And that insulin is going to store as something that goes back to the circle of hearts. That circle of hearts it's a manifestation. Diabetes is just one, right? But diabetes doesn't have a look. There are many people who are small who are suffering with diabetes or insulin resistance or thyroid issues that are directly tied to the amount of sugar, carbohydrates. I interchange those two things together that they're consuming essentially.
Yeah. What about somebody with a, I could see us doing this again, maybe doing a Facebook Live offline. Well, let's talk about that. We should do a Facebook Live.
Sure.
But if somebody wanted to ask, somebody had some diagnosis of those bone muscle diseases, muscular sclerosis, do you think that could be improved with eating more meat?
Absolutely. So there is research. Any autoimmune issue, they again teach. Autoimmune is your body fighting against itself. And what I've learned and what the research shows is your body is actually trying to protect you because it's resilient. It is fighting against what you're feeding it. And so that, MS, lupus for me, gout, all of those things are your body trying to kick out what it does not want. And so it shows up over time as pain. And usually a doctor is not connecting that to insulin. And so, yes, to that, yes, taking out the wrong things cannot hurt your body.
Absolutely.
Understanding eating fruits and vegetables is not necessarily the answer. We've given them a green pass for everything. And my sound the alarm is that's not necessarily the case. You say this often. Well, we say this often, I should say, from our show, that there are some medicinal properties related to eating plants. But if you're not sick, then why do you need plants, right? So it is a medicine, but you also have to think about the sicknesses that we are suffering are all from ultra processed foods, from overeating plants, are what's making us sick. And then you're using the same thing because all medicines are manipulated plants, right? Most medicines are based in plants. When you could simply stop consuming those things, put protein and fat back in your way of eating and watch your body thrive. I'm the witness, the proof in the pudding, you're the proof in the pudding. And even what you're doing, with yourself, your family, and people that you meet, like it is life-saving. I'm beyond saying life-changing. It is literally giving you life back.
Yes, it is. I can attest to that. So if I want to ask you as we try to land the plane, what are 3 truths that people need to know as it relates to metabolic health?
So one of the truths about metabolic health is that metabolism is how your body is metabolizing food. And so it is best that you understand that your body is struggling to metabolize things that are foreign to it. So protein and fat, carbohydrate, those are the essential macronutrients that your body needs. Let me say that again. The essential macronutrients that your body needs is protein and fat. I know that they've been demonized. We've taken them out of our diet. We've gone to low fat. We're eating more fruits and vegetables, but your body thrives on that. That's one truth. The other truth is your body does not require carbohydrates. I just want to say again that carbohydrate equals sugar. That sugar is a saccharide. That saccharide is all plant-based stuff, is going to be sugar. It is going to be sugar in the body. And thirdly, I would say metabolically, please understand your labs. No longer accept from a doctor saying all my numbers are good. I have worked with people that everything is in the green, but they are insulin resistant. They are having struggles. This is the last thing that I'll say about that is, if you know for yourself that you have tried everything to be better, you're still experiencing pain, you've done all of the recommendations, you've added more beans, you're eating a plate that has no meat on it, my high recommendation is that you try putting protein and fat back in your diet and give yourself a chance to see how your body feels. I've not met anybody yet that I've offered this challenge to them that they have not felt better. I'm not saying it's not a struggle, because there is a withdrawal period that makes you feel very sulky, right? But if you can get over that hump, just like a drug addict, if you will, if you can get over that hump, then you'll be able to appreciate protein and fat is where you will thrive.
I love it. Thank you so much, DeNitra, for identifying those 3 truths, or 3 to 4 truths for sure. If someone was thinking about, okay, I'm listening to you, obviously this probably feels heavy for a lot of people because of how we've been trained, how we've been conditioned culturally, experientially, etc. And maybe if you were talking to someone, many times after an event, there is somebody who runs up to you and say, oh my goodness, like, how do I get started? What would you suggest that are steps that a person might need to take to start prioritizing their optimal health?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say, so that it's simple, is if you're in the grocery store and you are shopping in the grocery store, I would say choose one ingredient foods. Let's say you're not ready to hop on the meat. Personally, for me, I am carnivore. I primarily only eat meat as my source of fuel. Let's say you're not there. If you're in the grocery store, let's shop along the outskirts of the grocery store, where we say that those are fruits and vegetables. Along the backside, you're going to find your meats, and then up the other side, you're going to find your dairy. Let's start there. Eating one ingredient foods. Anything that has more than 4 or 5 ingredients, again, it's a science project. It's an experiment. It is not food. Everything in those center aisles that are in packages for shelf life is not for your life. Right? So stay away from those things. So the other thing is to cut the sugar out. The sweet tasting sugar and the non-sweet sugar, it's all going to metabolize in your body as sugar. Your body doesn't have a gauge to say this sugar is better than that sugar. Prioritize protein and fat. I mean, we're discovering this beef fat. I literally am eating beef fat every day for the last 3 weeks. I was already eating beef fat, but find you a butcher and try you some beef fat. It is a game changer. Your brain will thank you. The other thing I would say is get your labs done. Like, if you're the person who says, I don't go to the doctor, I don't fool with doctors, I'm saying get your labs done. The main 2 labs you want to get to start with, is an A1C and a fasting insulin. And don't be comfortable saying things like, he says I'm pre-diabetic. Don't let the pre fool you. Pre-diabetes means that you have 10 to 15 years of sugar damage. That is not a safe place to be. That is not a watch it. And then the other thing I would say is watch your own symptoms. Pay attention to your body. Quit blaming it on everything else but what you're eating. Because I guarantee you it is connected to something that you're eating. that you thought was healthy, whether it's nuts, whether it's grains. So that's a way to get started and be an advocate. That's me, an advocate for yourself. You're identifying, first of all, what's going on in your body, and then you advocate, and then you do what B. Wendy has done is become a part of a community that normalizes that I need to know my A1C. That's a topic that we should be talking about. We should be asking our friends, hey girl, what's your A1C? Hey guy, what's your A1C? Right? And understanding what that ultimately means. A high A1C means that you're sick, even if you're not in the diabetic range. If you are in a 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, even anything above a 5 is a warning sign before the destruction. If you keep on that trajectory, then diabetes and more is on the way.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, DeNitra. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you before we talk about how people can connect with you?
Absolutely.
Anything else I didn't ask you that you feel compelled to share?
The compelling thing that I feel to share is you've heard us talk a lot about insulin resistance, what it is and what's happening with your body. The goal is to become insulin sensitive. So we're looking to go from insulin resistance to insulin sensitivity. What does that look like? That looks like my blood sugar is staying low. It means that my body is not overworking insulin. It means that my moods are stabilized. It means that my body is not storing the sugar that I'm eating. So the goal is to go from being insulin resistant to insulin sensitive. In other words, you want insulin to have a nice, intimate relationship with you. You don't want insulin fighting with you. You want it to be agreeable so that things are normalized. So that's what I feel like is a major thing for people to understand, is that we're not just identifying insulin resistance as an issue, but the resolve of insulin resistance is being insulin sensitive.
Yeah, wow. I thank the Lord for you. I really, really do. So,
You.
how can people get in touch with you? For those who are going to see this video, I have put her website on the recording, nutritionalknowledge.com. But go ahead and tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So for those that are watching, the QR code takes you directly to my contact information. And for those that are listening, nutritional knowledge, play on words. I just want to say it out loud. It's spelled KNEW, nutritional knowledge. Again, as B. Wendy said, we believe that if you knew better, could you, should you, would you do better? So nutritional knowledge is spelled KNEWTRITIONAL, knowledge. We believe that there is a gap in knowledge, and we endeavor to be that bridge. You also can reach me on Facebook. My name is DeNitra Davis. You can send me a friend request there. On YouTube, my YouTube channel is Advocator, Educator, Coach. One of these days, people are going to refer to me as the ACE. That's the advocator, coach, and educator. So, B. Wendy, I appreciate being able to be a part of this, share with you, and being a part of your journey to optimal health and healing. It's been a pleasure to watch you grow and thrive in this space.
Thank you. I love being a carnivore, and I will tell the world I'm a carnivore. And I love, love, love eating meat to fuel my body and to see food as energy. It's so liberating to no longer be bound by food addiction, no longer be bound by food noises. It's such a freedom, and it makes life simple. I'm just eating meat. I'm intermittent fasting, and I'm eating meat. That's it. So thank you, DeNitra, for being here. I know that more people will be blessed, encouraged, empowered by the knowledge that you've shared today. And I hope that they blow up your mailbox, light up your website, and want to work with you for sure. And DeNitra is also on a Hey Sister Girl show on YouTube. And so you can subscribe if you want more support, more language, more community. You can subscribe or join Hey Sister Girl on Facebook. It is completely free. Hey Sister Girl does a show on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Central Standard, so you can subscribe to that. They are always sharing experiences and knowledge and facts about carnivore, and not just carnivore, but eating this way of life to be healed and to stay and to live well. Anything else really quickly that you want to say about that before we end?
Absolutely. So the last thing I say is we're using the term carnivore because ultimately we've come to know that when people say things like everything has sugar, meat does not have sugar. And so essentially the carnivore way of eating is us taking sugar out of our way of eating so that we have protein and fat to thrive on. And so even if you're not into the label of carnivore, just remember taking sugar out is the ultimate goal.
Awesome. Thank you. For those of you who are listening, this is Wendy Jackson with the Empower to Empower You podcast. I'll be back next time with another amazing episode. Have a wonderful day on purpose.